I just want to give context to why working with Navigate and data segmentation. The suggestion came from Tim Sendeo for the group to work on real life challenges the college is faced with. And they were selected and nominated by the cabinet, the two real life projects. They submitted initially something like 9 of them, and we zeroed it down to 2. The participants was also nominated by functional leaders for us to start building a pipeline of internal or in-house leaders, basically. So that's the context why they dealt with those 2 projects specifically.
All right, first question.
Hi, so with the kind of lackluster use of Navigate as a system, with the bugs that you've experienced, and with the cost of time that might go into doing a rebranding and rollout of this particular system while looking towards something that might meet your needs better, and the friction that might occur in your user base as all of that happened, did you investigate at all the ability to break the contract?
So yes, we did. Good question. So yes, we did. And so it's not that easy to just break a contract. There are additional costs associated with that. And so through our research, what we found is that there was some level of accountability on both sides with regard to being able to adequately implement the project, as well as what Navigate was supposed to do that we thought it was going to do. There were several changes of the guard throughout the implementation process, and so there really wasn't consistency on our part in terms of walking the process through to make sure that it was successful. And so it wasn't as easy as just saying, EAB, you didn't do what you promised us. It was really a twofold situation, which is why we're trying to work through the kinks as best we can. And then through the next process of an RFP, we can look and see, does EAB work, or is there something else out there that works better for us?
Good morning. So just to clarify, students are currently using this system, and if so, at what point is it introduced to students and how?
So right now, the piece that students tend to use, and we're encouraging them to use, is scheduling the advising appointments. Again, because of the nature of the implementation and the rollout, we don't have a critical mass of students using it. And so we're starting with teams at the campuses. And in that way, I think I would acknowledge that Gettysburg has really been a vanguard on this. We're working with the students through our tutoring center, through our counseling advising center, to get that piece rolling.
I'm interested in the top 3 lessons you've learned or recommendations you'd make so that a similar situation doesn't occur in the future. For example, the changing of the guard was mentioned. We know that we're looking forward to some sort of major reorganization in the next year. So we can anticipate already there might be some kind of changes in structures and such. So what, beyond your initial recommendations for Navigate, what are the takeaways so this doesn't repeat down the road?
Lori, I think that's a great question, and it's something that we've talked about as a team. Some of the things that we recommend moving forward are making sure that we have stakeholders from lots of different areas involved from the get-go, and that was something that was missing when Navigate was first brought on board. And we heard that from our colleagues in OIST, that they weren't brought on as part of the selection process until fairly late in the game. So we want to make sure that moving forward, we identify all the stakeholders that are important from the functional areas and make sure that we have individuals representing so that we can catch things early on. We can't prevent personnel changes, but what we can do is make sure that we have all the voices at the table when and representation from those voices during the process of selection and through implementation, regardless of who the individual people are.
I would also add that even though there had been a lot of changing of the guards, I would need to acknowledge that our colleagues who helped support the initial implementation did a Herculean task because, if you look at the resources that they needed, but they had to do it all by themselves. So I think that's part of it. As the college puts together a team, hopefully we would not repeat that mistake and actually resource those individuals as we should have done with our earlier teams.
Rory, since you asked for three, the third one I would mention, and it's something that we've talked about, is that, and it fits with the theme of the day, is that sometimes you need to take risks and try something. This product was something that was new, and Hack took a risk signing on as a pilot partner. And this was something that the EAB Navigate system was not widely implemented at a number of institutions at the time that we took it on. So we joined as a pilot partner, trying to take a look at what our students needed. And the three things that were mentioned, the early alert system, the data analytics, and the academic scheduling, we didn't have that. We had an early alert system, but we didn't have the other pieces in place. So we took a risk. We tried a product that hadn't been tested other places. And sometimes when we try things, they don't work. And that's what we found here, is that some pieces have worked, some pieces didn't. So should that mean we never try something new? Absolutely not. But it means we need to go in eyes wide open and make sure that folks know, okay, we are trying this and it's something new. It's going to have kinks and bugs and things aren't going to work well, but that's how we learn and that's how we grow. And I hope that's what we also instill in our students, that the desire to keep trying and learning from the things that don't go well.
Good morning, Patrick Hoffman from Gettysburg campus. As part of your the assessment process, do we know how many % of our faculty and advisors are currently utilizing Navigate, or how many % of our students are using Navigate?
We don't have clean enough data for me to adequately report. So we are in the process of starting to make sure that we can get accurate data that we can share.
As we consider using different, like a replacement, are we going to actually be testing with students and involving them, since they'll be using it, and make sure that it's something that they think is easy to use and is hitting what we want it to be doing?
I would say yes, the provost has put together a cross-functional team, and as we go along, I believe we would expand that, and we would never bring anything on board that is not being tested by our constituency groups that will be using it.
As a faculty member, it's a little alarming to think that this could change. I've used it as early alert because that's part of my my classes tend to be on that list. Why should I invest time and energy if within 2 years it looks like this is going to change? I mean, I'm not trying to be, but why? What's your message to the faculty? Because I can kind of ignore this except for the early alert part. Is that what I should be doing, or why should I be investing in learning this system that I've found fairly cumbersome and fairly difficult to work with?
So Linda, the answer to that is, we know from looking at colleges across the country that early alert systems help students stay in school. And so our mission as an institution is to help our students succeed in achieving their goals. So the request to faculty and to advisors and counselors who use the system, even though this may change, the early alert system is something that is institutionally important for us to follow through on, even if it's clunky and it's not as user-friendly as Starfish was when we were using Starfish. I will say that when our team was pulled together, we had some of us were strongly opposed to keeping Navigate, and others were strongly in favor of figuring out how to make it work. So absolutely, we've gone through a whole process to say, okay, why should we care? And the answer is for our students. And yes, there may be change. There's likely going to be many more changes to come with all of the reorganization that's coming and as higher ed continues to evolve. But our request is that we have this product, we're paying for this product, we can't get out of the contract. So let's use it to the best of our ability to help our students.
So to that end, workforce development and their students and our students integrate with many of the systems on campus very differently. And so how do you envision, as you look forward to another platform, those students being serviced and tracked in a similar way?
I just want to put a caveat in here. We are not certain, like it's not been predetermined that we're going to a different system. I think we've put together a group, first of all, to investigate. We're looking for the best option. So we, at the end of the process, we may determine that EAB has improved enough that this is the best system. Or we may decide it's another system. So hopefully we don't walk away from here thinking we've predetermined that we're going to a different system. I'll let someone else finish answering. I just wanted to put that clarification out there. Sorry, do you want to ask your question again? I'm sorry, I just threw everybody off.
So students in workforce development are often tracked and integrate with the systems that we have here at HAC differently. And so going forward, do you have intentions to consider those students and how they integrate and access and how we can better serve them, similarly to how it's done on the credit side moving forward?
I would say yes, because right now we are all in the space where we are talking about one HAC. So one of the things that we're looking at is how do we build our systems so that, and our processes, so that there really isn't a differentiation in how credit, non-credit engage with those systems. So in response to your question, yes, all that will factor into our decision making.
I think for me and for students is that it's a standalone thing. So it's one more click. It's one more thing that they have to look at with no value added for them. So going forward, is there a plan, since we're with them, we're going to be with them for a while, working with their programmers and with OIST to integrate it better into the current systems that students are using. So because on first glance, it is actually a really cool product if we can do from the student side, scheduling and contact my advisor and, you know, blah, 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 blah. But I think it's the integration piece. It's, again, it's one more thing and they don't click into it. They want to get in, they want to get out. So I'm curious if there was any plan to do a better job of integrating it into the MyHack environment, or have it be the thing that they use to schedule classes, to register even for classes. Like what going forward then is, since there are a contract for the next 2 years, a outline of where that's working, and where have you talked to students? Have you spoken to students and said, hey, have you ever seen this? Like an informal survey, and do you have any idea what this is about?
Well, so Jen, your question is about being able to integrate students being able to register. And while that is a feature that Navigate might be able to do, it's not a feature that we feel in our research is that we're confident in using, because we either have to do all or nothing. So all scheduling has to go through Navigate or none. And we have some work to do if we want to go into the all. And while we're investigating whether or not, you know, this team that's moving forward, and several of us are on that team, we want to focus on what are the things that it does really well, not necessarily expand some of those other capabilities that are going to involve a lot of time and effort if we end up looking at that product and saying, okay, you know what, there's other systems out there that we want to use instead. So we're, you know, and I,
all they need to do on my hack is see who their advisor is and shoot an email out. So they've circumvented the whole Navigate
Yes.
system. And so that's why I added the second question is, have you guys, have we had conversations with students about, do they even know this exists? And to get some data from them as to whether or not, so going forward, as you're exploring this over the next 2 years, is it from their end something that they see as value added? Because they can just circumvent everything in Navigate. I get the early alert piece and I'm all on board with that. Please don't misunderstand. I'm just saying it's just one more thing that they have to click on or do or look at, and they don't have the time.
So may I answer?
Yeah, I was going to say, can we have Deb? Deb is one of our super users.
So I started using Navigate right from the beginning because I work primarily with virtual students. This is a subset of our students, not representative of all students. But the comment I most frequently hear is, oh my gosh, I can just go on the internet and schedule my car oil change. Finally, Hack is getting on board with, I can just schedule to see my advisor. That feature is very valuable to students. And when I have done exactly what you suggest, talk with students about the other features that Navigate has, the most valuable to students is planning out all my future semesters and seeing how long this is going to take me. But can we make that feature work?
And those are some of the questions that the cross-functional team is trying to answer.
And I know at Gettysburg, a lot of our advisors and counselors, when they meet with students, they are actually showing them how to get into Navigate and how to use those special features. So we're trying to self-teach them that way.
So there will be a formal training rollout plan intentionally created to make whoever's using the system more aware of its functionality. It's part of their recommendations, a fully rolled out training process.
Okay. So can I just, hi, up here. Hi, Kathy, it's Lori. Hi, guys. So from the perspective of students with disabilities, I don't know if you guys are aware, but we are not able to have a caseload inside Navigate. So early alert is not working for our most vulnerable population of students who we need to be alerted by. And I don't even know if faculty are aware of that. You guys, if you send out an alert, we're never getting it. In Starfish, we did, and we were able to respond. So I just have the concern if they were going to move forward with this for the next 2 years, can that be something that we work on? Our response that we've gotten over the past few years is, no, sorry guys, we don't know. We don't know how to set you up with it. So I just want to bring that forward for you.
It's note taken, and we will contact you to have conversations on how we move forward with it.
I just have a question because, and this is not against you guys at all, but I've had people stand up there before and tell me, we're going to do this. Here's the schedule. Here's the training. Nothing. So what's the guarantee from a faculty point of view that you're telling me the same thing again? Where is it coming? Like, because you're telling all this stuff it does, and like, I've been forced to use Navigate because I teach a lot of developmental students. I mean, I teach math, so everything's high risk, right? And so I've been doing Navigate with no success because I can choose only one option from it. The student apparently gets like a ton of emails about it. They don't necessarily, some love it, some don't. But where's the guarantee that we're going to get this again? Because this is just a repeat, right? That we're promised things, we're promised timelines, we're promised training, and then it just falls by the wayside. So I'm hearing it again. And so are we actually going to do this now? What's the guarantee on our side?
Very valid point. I don't have a written guarantee, but I can tell you this, that I do know that we put trainings in place. I can cite areas that they've started. Again, sorry, my Gettysburg folks that I'm putting you on blast, but they've been doing some training. We made a concerted effort to try to do things within student affairs, make sure they work before we engage faculty. And so you would be seeing some site trainings. I think this time around we'll plan to be able to reach out at the department level, at the unit level, so that we can engage with a small group. And we have put together a team to help us. So it's not just a couple people trying to do the heavy lift and it gets lost. So yes, you make a very valid point. Like I said, I can't give you a written guarantee, but a word commitment that this is what we're doing. We put it up there, but we have started doing it. Okay. All right, thank you.
If
Noted.
training was available by Zoom or videoed or something, would that be a good avenue?
All right, thank you.
When we're considering training options, there unfortunately probably won't be huge numbers of people who are always at those trainings. But one thing that I can say from a perspective of a smaller campus and trying to go for training, give day and evening options, because our evening adjunct faculty need to use this as much as the daytime, and they're missing out on all of the training. It's also helpful sometimes to try and do in-person training just to assume that you're going to have to go and lead me by the hand how to do everything. I was one of those who was supposed to lead some of the early training, and what was coming down to for me to train somebody else was not helpful. So I guess the assumption was from the Navigate folks that we had sat in on the early demos where half the stuff wasn't available to us, but it's here is what you're going to do, and now it's here, go use it. So assume that we know nothing in doing this training and start from scratch with most of us.
Does this system have the capability of building out a communication flow for our current students? Did you hear me? Okay.
Yes, yes, and in that mode, they call them campaigns. So you can do campaigns at an institutional level, you can do campaigns at unit level, and you can do it at the individual advice or caseload level.
So are we doing that now?
Some are. Amanda, do you want to speak to that? Sorry.
She needs a mic. Get that woman a mic.
Get that woman a mic.
Yeah.
Hi. Sure. At the Gettysburg campus, we are doing campaigns. Everything from our advisors are using the campaign feature, and in tutoring, we're using it for academic coaching appointments as well. So in short, what happens is there's an identified time period where we want students to connect with a resource. So we'll talk about academic coaching, and so we'll push out a campaign, and students will, in a certain population, get an email and be invited to make an appointment with our academic coach. It has been incredibly successful. So we're pretty excited about that. And our advisors are doing the very same thing, so that they are using it for students to do registration, to come in to talk before registration about their classes. I don't know numbers, but I know anecdotally at the Gettysburg campus, we have had much success with that.
Good morning. I wanted to offer to you, first of all, that was one of the clearest presentations I've ever seen, so thank you for that. But I have a few thoughts. So first of all, from the faculty end, a couple things are this fatigue of products that's occurring. So in the last few weeks, I've been to my Curriculog, I've been to my Nuventive. I do know how to use this one and Starfish, but we have to think about the relational advising. So my radical idea is throw this one out, the baby with the bathwater, and go to the relational advising in which faculty are the early alert system without the use of technology. I see the value in the sequencing out of their courses, their educational plans, but as far as it's me telling them, you're missing a lot of class, and sitting down with them and saying, here's what do we need to do here? So I want to be the early alert, and I want faculty to be able, and all constituencies to say, how do we make that contact that it's not another level? The other thing I want to offer specifically to this program is the black hole that is happening. So I've had a couple uh-oh moments over the past couple years since we've implemented this program. And the uh-oh moment is when out of the blue, I decide I should probably check my Navigate and see that people have alerted that I was supposed to, as the advisor, do something. But because it's not integrated, and I know you keep hearing that word integrated, I had no idea. Whereas if someone had just say, hey, I see you're the advisor, connect with them, I would have been on that in 5 seconds. So that was some of the problem with this particular product. Thank you.
Thank you.
I do want to let the group know that the Harrisburg campus is using, and I think college-wide, the counseling and advising offices. I don't know, Nicole, if you can shake your head yes or no. We're all using the Navigate scheduling and campaign feature, and it has made a tremendous difference in us reaching students earlier to talk about their educational planning and to get them in a way that they want to do it. So somebody will, a counselor or an advisor will send the campaign. They'll automatically start setting up appointments with their counselor or advisor in a format that they like to respond to, right? They can do it, it's under their control. It was amazing this past semester how many of the counselors and advisors in my area had appointments well before registration started, where we've never really had that. And then also the reduction that created in our phone calls in our reception area to schedule appointments reduced it greatly, so that because then the students could just do it automatically themselves, which the feedback the counselors and advisors have gotten is they really like being able to do it themselves. So. Yes. Right, I think the idea was to start it with the counseling and advising, counseling and advising offices, make sure more of the bugs were worked out, because before they kind of, I'll let Radeska talk about it.
That's okay, she said it. So our plan had been, and we started this spring, Nicole kind of spearheaded it, was to focus on kind of building depth in student affairs and making sure that if issues arose, we dealt with it. We worked EAB. We now have a really good rep who's been working closely with us, meets with us monthly, and to actually work through bugs. And our hope is, as we work through them, the pieces that are successful, then we can engage faculty on it, help faculty engage with their students using that.
Final thoughts from the panel?
Thank you for your attention.
Thank you.
Thank you, panelists, very much. Ladies and gentlemen, I really do appreciate those questions. I know many of us took a lot of notes on how we are going to change some things. I do want to congratulate these folks in the next group that's coming up as well. These people have full-time jobs. And so what they did is they took this on as a leadership project. And we're very grateful for the insights that you have gained. You weren't the individuals who chose the product. And so I don't want anyone throwing arrows at you, getting arrows at you. But we do really appreciate the time that you took in this. What will happen is they will present to the Board of Trustees on Tuesday at our board meeting. And the information that we gained today will definitely be integrated into the plan going forward. And I do say, and Joseph, thank you for the question about training and a project that's very important. Project management is very important to any of the projects that we unveil going forward. And I think even though it'll be quite obvious, I think we learn that to really engage all stakeholders, especially the students, is critical to the success of any of these projects. So going forward, lessons learned. So again, thank you all very, very much. We're going to take a 5-minute stretch break, and then the next group will come up to talk about data segmentation and analytics on how we can retain students and recruit students. Very exciting. Talk to us about data segmentation and analysis, and they're going to talk about supporting decision making when it comes to recruiting and retention, real important pieces here at the college. So I'm going to turn it over to Rich Cardamone, who is going to facilitate our discussion. Rich.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me well? I'm using a lapel mic, so I just want to make sure it was working. We seem to have thinned out a little bit. I don't know if everybody's getting coffee and donuts. They're going to miss some very exciting topics, data segmentation analysis. Coming from the finance team, this is a great topic. But no, actually, throughout the morning, if you've noticed, the keynote speaker, even during the Navigate presentation, there kept being talk of data analytics or data to help with the decision making. If you think of all of the big companies that Dr. Dreyer had mentioned, Google, Amazon, all of them have leveraged data to better serve their customers. We're not selling widgets, we're not doing web searches, but we are serving our students. So what our task for our team was to look at the data that may be available to us and come up with a strategy to basically collect that data, analyze the data, and maybe come up with recommendations. That maybe is a key factor in data analysis. As we go through, we're going to talk really about the process. Whenever you do data analysis, process is the most important thing. If you start with a broken process, your results isn't going to be very valuable. It could be completely in the wrong direction you want to go. So really, what we'll cover is the process we followed, and we'll actually engage you in a pop quiz that we have a little bit later. And then at the end, we'll share with you the insights that we found and some recommendations on how we think the college should move forward regarding data analysis. So as I mentioned, the process. Process is extremely important. And you heard a little bit again in the process in the earlier conversations about engaging a bunch of people, the stakeholders learning. Data analysis is no different. What we did was we brought together a group of subject matter experts. We have people from student affairs side, academic affairs side, faculty, OIST, finance. So we all came together, and what we were trying to do is identify what's the business problem, what's the issue. We know retention's a problem. We know student success is a problem. So from there, we started to formulate, okay, well, what might it be? We always hear scuttle around the campus of, oh, it's XYZ. It's the last person to register is always the first person to leave because they weren't ready or they didn't get their financial aid. And it goes on and on and on. So what we did was we sat down as a team before we looked at any data, and we came up with a whole bunch of hypotheses. We ultimately landed on 9 hypotheses. And you'll see as we go through, because the process worked, we didn't get all the way through all 9 of the hypotheses. So if you're traveling on the journey with me, we started with the experts, we went to the why. Once we had the why and we knew roughly what we wanted, having I'll say the business process owners, the student affairs team members, since they're day in and day out, they know the data that they need or the terms that they use. It was really taking that information and I'll say translating it and going to IR and saying, hey, IR, we know you have all this great data. Can you help us out? What information can you pull? So we had several meetings with institutional research. We walked through the different data that was available. As a large institution like us, we have not only Banner, we have Navigate, we have a variety of systems. And if you think about transaction or iteration that somebody does something, there's some form of data that gets created. So we were trying to think of what data may be out there that could help us work through our hypotheses and test those. So down this little corner, that's where we worked with IR, and we went into the matrix. We decided to take that pill. And once we had the data, you know, it's not quite simple just to throw it into a computer and do data analysis. We did use a variety of basic statistical analysis. For those that may be wondering, we used Welch's two-sample t-tests, and we did some logistic regression as well. But we really, it worked. Once we got the data, we took a lot of work to look at the data, understand the data, make sure we were interpreting the data properly before we analyzed it. Then we put it into a format that we were able to actually do some statistical analysis on it. So that was really, you know, you'll see at the end, we got, throughout, we have a variety of slides that have colorful graphs and everything. That's all the sausage making happened in the back end. Took a whole chunk of time. And then we have the end result of the story that we would like to share with you. So if you're paying attention, there's a little guy over here. He's got some significance. So we'll talk about him at the end. And then ultimately, once we had the results of the analysis, we sat and thought about some recommendations. I mentioned how we came up with 9 different hypotheses. When we had the results, we realized a couple of the hypotheses, we didn't ask for the right data, or the data that we had, or the data that we wanted wasn't available. So we had to abandon 3 of the hypotheses tests. Keeping in mind, as Dr. Skia made the comment earlier, we do have full-time jobs doing other stuff. So this was kind of a side project, an activity for fun, I would say. I enjoyed it, I think probably more than some others, but. So we looked at our recommendations, and we went back and we really looked through the hypotheses multiple times, because we wanted to ensure anything that we would share, we know that people are going to look at it and they're going to jump right to a solution, or they're going to jump to causation. I think it's extremely important that you understand our job was not, or our goal, either or, was not for causation. It was really to identify some correlation and help the college be better focused with our finite resources, so that when we want to go look at information, we're kind of looking in a general area that we're getting the most bang for the buck. We also, another opportunity when looking at the data, we want to be able to check if we make changes to our processes. You know, many times we're looking at things, we're like, oh, this is broke, we got to change it. And we'll go and change it, and then it may not have the same result that we thought. So data analysis, you'll see what we came up with, is another tool that we can use to go back and check that change that we made, did it really have the impact that we anticipated? So it can identify opportunities, and it can validate decisions we've made to make sure that it went the right path, or if we need to rework it and go a different path. And then really, you can see it's a circle. You want to keep doing it, because the goal of the data analysis is to be iterative. You'll see when we have results or hypotheses, it's the tip of the iceberg. There's many instances where we need to go much deeper before we jump to any type of solution or causation or anything like that. So it is meant to be the iterative process to better understand our students. So ultimately, we're serving them the best that we can. So the team is going to walk through the 6 different hypotheses. But before we walk through those, I want to explain and help you understand in context the data that we started with, and ultimately what we analyzed, so that when you see the results, you can really, I'll say, understand what it may be saying. So up here, there's some general, all of these numbers that you'll see in this slide are averages. So we did look for a 2-year academic year. We looked at 17 and 18. And then we looked at it and we averaged them across the semester for the summary slides, and across the year for the summary slide here, and across semester for the other slides. But you've probably heard many times we serve about 18,000 students. That's true, on average, about 18,000. Of those students, you could see 46% are existing students that are coming back, returning with us. 15% are new students. We have a variety of students that, whether they graduate or they were guest students, you know, or they transfer to another institution, we'd see that population here. But really, the population we were trying to focus in on is students that did not return. So the way we define a student that did not return was we looked at it on a semester, so from fall to spring, or from spring to next fall. Now we know we definitely want to eventually look further to see what the average attrition is. Like maybe it's 3 semesters and then they end up leaving. But for this sake, that's just where we are, and that's the data that you'll see. So up at the top, you'll see we're losing about 11% of new students and 11% of existing students. So every semester, the 18,000 students that we welcome, 4,700 students are new students. And then the rest, of course, are returning students. Of that whole population, we're losing 4,000 students a semester. It's split almost right down the middle, 50-50 of 2,000 of those students are existing students, 2,000 students are new students. They're walking in the door and they're walking right back out the door in a semester. And that's really at the heart of what you'll see next is this large pie chart, the 46% of new students that did not return. So I could see you falling asleep already. I'm sorry. This is exciting stuff. It will, honestly, it'll help the college better. So there was several aha surprise moments as we went through, at least for several of the team members. We want to engage you guys. Everybody has a mobile phone, I assume. So open up your mobile phone. If you could navigate to popin.live, and then you'll be asked for a code. If you put that code in, there's going to be 6 questions. So take your time, read the questions, and answer the question that, if you think the population, you'll see. It's better to read the question. I don't want to mistake them. And I will give you a few minutes to complete that survey. And not to add any stress. Almost done? No, you shouldn't have to create an account. You should just have to put the code in. Anybody else had to create an account? That's user error. Sorry. Yeah, it's pop in live. Seems to be working for a lot of people out here. Are you guys all iPhones? It's not working? Oh, everybody's in it. What? Oh, so one tip, you may want to turn Wi-Fi off. Everybody's using the same Wi-Fi. It may speed it up a little bit. So 15 seconds. This is the double daily. Actually, if it's any consolation, the music is set for 10 hours. So we could be here all day. There's 6 questions. Who completed it? Good job. Who's still trying? Who gave up? So you're going to see we actually have a count of how many of you responded. So we know we're going to come after you. You should respond. It's a fun little game. So ready? She's muting me. It's like the Oscars. I have to get off the stage.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Christine Capuzzo, for those of you that don't know me, and I'm the Director of Counseling and Advising here at the Harrisburg campus. And I'm happy to be here today to help explain several of our hypotheses. So before I start that, though, I want to re-emphasize 2 points that Rich made because I think they're pretty critical in once we kind of get going here. Our presentation is really going to tempt you, and it's going to tempt you to jump into causation. If anybody knows me, I want to fix things all the time. And so my group had to constantly rein me in and go, no, Christine, it's correlation, not causation. So I think the other 2 points to re-emphasize are our data looked at 4,700 new students. And each question, each hypothesis, after we looked at the data, we had 15 more questions about each one. And those 15 additional questions really need to be looked at in the same manner, which is what Rich was talking about earlier as far as the repetitive process is concerned. So our first question, let's not put the data up.
No, it's not. Okay. I don't know why I didn't share it. There it is.
So our first question is new students who registered 15 days or less before the start of a class. We were assuming, we wanted to see if they returned at a higher rate compared to other new students. So 16 days or more, those that registered 16 days or more, and those that registered 15 days or less. That's what we were looking at. So you all thought that 58% of you thought that that statement was true, that students that registered 15 days or less before the start of a term did not return at the same rate. Before we go, I want to point out one thing that, again, I think is going to be shocking to people here. 32% of our new students register 15 days or less before the start of a term. Yeah, nobody knows that more than the people who work in counseling, advising, Welcome Center, and financial aid. And so let's give all those folks, right? And so I think the other thing that really helps to point out is, okay, 32%, wow, maybe we should be doing things a little differently there. But again, 15 more questions, right, just off of that. So what did our data say? I'm glad I'm not working the computer. Our findings said the last in are the first out. So those of you that were in that 48%, you were right. So last in are first out. Again, 15 more questions come up with that one question. Where's my pointer? Okay. That's okay. So when we go from fall to fall, there was about a 10% difference. And when we go to spring, there was about a 5% difference. And I'm going to make another assumption here. But the smaller difference from spring to spring, it's a shorter registration time. So we don't have as much time. We don't get as many students in the spring. So again, needs to be looked at more. But that's pretty significant. Last one's in, first one's out. Something for us to really consider. The next question we had was new students who enroll 15 days or less before the start of classes and enroll in a virtual course do not return at the same rate as other new students. Now, one thing I want to point out before we go to our data is we were not able to tease out, was virtual their only option? Okay, so we weren't able to tease out, was virtual their only option? The other piece that's important to point out here is that this data is a subset of our first question, right? So we're still talking about 15 days before the start of a term. So you all said false. So let's see. The group, pretty 60%. So yes, I'm ready. Drum roll. There was no statistical difference. No statistical difference. Again, 15 more questions come up around this, right? We only asked one piece, one simple question. In the fall, 72% of new students who registered 15 days or less prior to the start of the term did take a virtual class. That's pretty high. And in the spring, 63% of students who registered 15 days or less took a virtual class. And we were not, again, I want to say it one more time, we weren't able to determine was virtual their only choice in their course option. So for me, this journey, this project was incredibly inspiring. We have 4 other questions to go over, but I think it really spurs us on, makes me hungry to want more. So Denise is going to give us some more.
Good morning. I'm Denise Pfeiffer, the Director for Business Affairs for Workforce Development. This study was a little out of my realm. I don't work in the credit world. I'm in non-credit, so I learned a lot from this project. And I'm going to walk you through the next 2 assumptions that we had. So we'll go to assumption number 3. New students who apply for financial aid persist or return at the same rate as new students who do not apply for financial aid. When formulating our assumptions, one of the items that popped up rather quickly was financial aid. Does that have an impact? Students who apply, is there an impact on retention of those students? So we tested that assumption to find out whether students who apply for financial aid return at an equal rate to those who do not. It looks like your assumption was that it was false. 77% of you said that new students who apply persist at the same rate as those students who do not. So let's take a look at what the data said. Okay, to put this in perspective again, the pool of data that we looked at was academic years 17 and 18, 4,700 students per semester. Out of those 4,700 students, approximately 61% of those chose to apply for financial aid. That's a fairly large number. And this is the students that applied for fall and for spring. If you average those together, on average, 35% of those students did not return after applying for financial aid. The flip side of that is that 65% of those students who did apply for financial aid did return to HAC. If you look at those who did not apply for financial aid, you will find that if you average those together, 62% of those students did not return to HAC, those who did not apply for financial aid. So after looking at this data, it told us that there was a significant difference between those who did and did not apply for financial aid, and that those who did apply for financial aid did return to HAC at a higher rate than those who did not apply for financial aid. All right, let's go to the next assumption, number 4, regarding first-generation students. New first-generation students persist at the same rate compared to other new students. It looks like you said false to that assumption as well. So let's take a peek at what the data said for that area. All right, as we had said before, 4,700 students per semester. 11% of those students overall identified as first-generation students, just 11%. But out of the 11% of students that identified as first generation, these 2 lines here, approximately 32% of those did not return. The flip side of that is 68% of our first generation students did return to HAC. And of those who were identified as not being first generation students, there was a larger average loss in retention in that group, which was approximately, if you average these 2 together, 47%, which means that 53% of those students returned, as opposed to the 68% of our first generation students. So once again, the data did show that new students who are first generation do return to HAC at a higher rate than those who are not first generation. So all that, I will hand this over to Michelle Myers, who will talk about the last 2.
Good morning. I'll try not to cough through this because it's acoustically magnified when you do. So we'll go to the, looked at developmental courses. And by the way, I'm Michelle Myers, Associate Dean for Virtual Learning. I also teach. I teach online and in the classroom. And so retention is really important to me. And the effect that developmental classes have on our students' retention. So the assumption was new students who place into developmental courses do not return at a higher rate compared to other students, other new students. So 74% of you said pretty much that's true, that new students who place in developmental do not return at a rate higher. So you can look at the data, but before we do that, the fall average for those two academic years, 2017 and 2018, was in fall was 76% of our students placed in developmental courses. And for spring, it was 68%. So it's a large, in those academic years, it was a large percentage. The data says for both fall and spring, developmental students returned at higher rates than those who did not place in developmental courses. And I'm not going to talk about causes like, you know, they have to take several developmental courses, but that was found to be statistically significant. That's placed, not enroll. This is, and so by the way, it's those who place. I got that mixed up. All right, the second assumption. New students who enroll in 2 or more developmental courses do not return at a higher rate than other new students. We picked 2 or more because that's when they also have to take a foundational studies course as well. So, and all of you said they don't return, or that's true, that they do not return compared to other new students, 81%, pretty high. Let's review the results. So the new students who took 2 or more developmental courses returned at a higher rate than the new students who enrolled in less than 2 developmental courses. So it's a little bit, so I'm not going to go over the numbers there, but the exact numbers, it's the averages of the fall 24 and the next fall who did not return. But anyway, it was also considered statistically significant.
So, who's excited about data? Right? Yes? Me too. So we have some recommendations for the college. So first, do not jump to solutions, right? It's easy to do, especially for Christine and I throughout the last 9 months. But data is great, but data is just data. We need more information, we need more context. So again, try not to jump to solutions. We need to challenge our assumptions, as we've seen today, that a lot of us make some assumptions. So think about how we could better serve our students if we were more data informed. Increase use of data informed decision-making processes. Again, not data driven, data informed. Invest resources. So if you remember, Rich mentioned this little Lego guy here. Hack doesn't have a Lego guy here. Well, Rich was our Lego guy in this project. Hack doesn't have a Rich. Well, he does, but apparently Tim needs him. Apparently he's pretty good at his job, so we need another Rich. We need someone who lives between the raw data and the business end user. And of course, we hope the process doesn't end today. We hope we just introduce the process to you, and in order for this to be successful, Hack needs to adopt this and repeat the process. So, with our presentation and our recommendations, we hope we leave you curious, and we look forward to starting the conversation. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Agina Chambers, and I am a project manager in the OIS division, and I'm going to be your moderator. So, do we have any questions? Anyone?
Okay, thank you. Lunch.
Oh, great.
No question.
Okay, so we do have a question over here. Okay.
So my question for some of these is, how can we now dig down? Because as somebody who's working in that 15-day period with these students and seeing a lot of developmental students and seeing those big pieces come through, and knowing that we probably should get data on, well, how many of those who are going in developmental are coming right out of high school versus those who are non-traditional. So what are plans, or how can we start digging deeper into those pieces to maybe rework how we do new student orientation, or when we start new students registering? Like, you know, does the day we start them a month after everybody else does, or several weeks, make a difference?
So again, not jumping to solutions, right? This is the tip of the iceberg, and you had several more questions about some of the questions that we presented. And before we start making changes, those questions need to be asked and we need to drill down. So I think the drilling down on data is pretty critical for us moving forward and in our recommendations. And I think our Office for, I don't think it's called institutional research anymore, I'm sorry, institutional effectiveness. Our Office for Institutional Effectiveness and partnering with a Lego man is our recommendation, and getting a multidisciplinary team together. Or woman. Like a woman. Yes, yes, a Lego woman. Thank you, Michelle. Yes, thank you, Michelle. And getting a multidisciplinary team together to kind of continue to work these problems is important.
Just for the record, it's a Lego figure.
Hello, nice job. I appreciate all this information up here, but I'm curious, how easy is it to access this data? As a frontline advisor of international students, can I just request drilling down some numbers as I'm planning initiatives?
So the recommendation and really that process in the beginning, we really need somebody, something in between. Institutional effectiveness has a lot of data. The business user at the end, in your sense, you, knows some challenges that you have, and there's data. It's connecting what the problem is, figuring out what data to ask for, working with institutional effectiveness to get that data, understand that data. And it's a back and forth process to ensure that we really understand the data and what the data is telling us. So it's not a matter of that you can just go and run into a dashboard and see, oh, these numbers. There's all kinds of context underneath. There's qualitative information that needs to be weighed into it. So what we're recommending is a process be formalized and be put in place at HAC so that we can better use data to help drive and inform our decisions.
I wish it was that simple. I think that's one of the things that I learned through this process. I wish it was that simple. I wish I could just go to this great dashboard that's been created and go, yes, there's my answer. But it's so much more involved than that.
I was sort of hoping that you would maybe show some examples, but I know we have a lot of information in a lot of different places. I think the Tableau effort is very promising, and there's a lot of capability there to drill down. I've gotten reasonably capable at playing with Argos and finding things there, but it's still hard to find the information we need to make intelligent decisions. So for example, one of my jobs is scheduling courses, and trying to come up with an intelligent schedule that students can build a schedule from requires me to know, for example, what are some of the classes students are taking in combination so that I don't create conflicts. If an instructor wants to move a DiffyQ class to another time, I don't really know if that's going to cause a problem for students. And the way I get around that today is I pick up the phone and call my friend Christine Capuzzo and say, what are the consequences of doing this? Or what are some classes students are taking together? Or somebody will call me and say, hey, you put this class at a time that conflicts with that bio lab. Don't do that. And then I will try to fix it. But you know, this is the sort of thing I've been kind of asking for several years now, and I'm hoping we can get to a place where we have more data that we can use to make intelligent decisions.
Agreed. Any other questions?
So Rich, you mentioned the word qualitative data.
And so I come from a background of quantitative thinking. I'm a scientist, but there is a lot of value in the narrative, in the stories behind the numbers. And so I appreciate the presentation. It was very eye-opening. But what is the qualitative data that we're collecting, and how is that being stored, and how is that being analyzed?
So I was the Lego guy. I don't know at the business process. Figure, thank you. Well, yeah. I don't know what to say anymore. No, but to speak to it, I don't have like and I keep using that term business process owner at the end, because whether it's Christine or Brandy in student affairs or Rick in academic affairs, there's so much data that could help inform them in their decision making. They would be able to pair whatever qualitative information needs to be paired with the problem they're trying to solve. This is not meant to be we're just going to throw this information up and now everybody can read it and start doing things. This is just meant to focus, I'll say hack, on a particular problem and work all the way through with whoever needs to be part of that team to work it through. And then you go to the next problem. And it may be a completely different data set and qualitative information that you need to solve that problem. So this is really just recommending we need to formalize that process so that the business process owner knows that qualitative information to link into it.
So I told you we would tempt you, right? And it's really this, I think this whole presentation and everything we learned was, it's the process. And we need to institute the process here at HAC.
On your hypotheses, have you looked at external data of similar institutions? Do we have any, or the possibility of finding any?
Can you give us a little idea of what were the hypotheses that you could not gather data on? I'm just kind of curious about what you couldn't see.
So let's try to answer the first question first. Linda, if you want to just hold on to that for a second and maybe ask that again. I'm sorry.
Well, for instance, retention rates at other colleges, are they finding similar data? Again, not to necessarily find the cause, but to find the correlation. Are other institutions having a similar correlation? I'm
We
just wondering
didn't
if we
compare our data set to other institutions.
Okay, just one.
Yeah, we were time limited and what we did. Was,
No, I'm not. Yeah, I'm not criticizing what you did.
Yeah.
It was great. I'm just wondering, is that something that could be helpful?
I'm sure. Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure. And I'm sure that through some of the national organizations and associations, that some of that data would be easily attainable. I just don't know it.
So just to expand on that too, there is certainly a variety of information available to compare against. Institutional effectiveness does that for a lot of their various reporting. What I would advocate though is we need to serve our students the best. You know, Amazon doesn't necessarily go and look at, you know, buy.com and try and compare. They focus on the customer and serve them best. And really what this is for is to focus on our students. And again, kind of narrow down, identify through correlation, and then further dig deeper to figure out how do we best serve that student. Because our students are a bit unique. I mean, they're in this community, they may have different challenges. And unless we find another institution that's exactly the same, with the same demographics and everything else, we can definitely relate. But I would like to stay focused on our students and just serving them better.
And if you could go back to Linda's question, sorry. Linda.
No, sorry, I got distracted. Imagine that. No, I was just asking what were your other hypotheses that you could not run data for? I'm just curious, what other questions were you looking at?
We didn't ask the questions right from the beginning. And I think that that was another piece that we learned through this process. So some of our questions, we just didn't think through in their entirety. And I'm hesitant to bring them all up because I think they may lead us down a rabbit hole that I don't know that we want to go down, but do we want to?
I'm fine with sharing it.
Okay, go ahead, share them.
Want to do a vote?
Yeah, share them then. Yeah, share them.
Hold on, I gotta log into our team drive and grab it because I didn't have that handy. I apologize.
So I know one of the questions was looking at, and this was one for me that after I really wanted to know, but afterwards I went, we didn't ask it right and we didn't gather the right information, which was, do students who are assigned to professional advisors and counselors persist at a higher rate than students that are assigned to faculty advisors? And the reason why we didn't ask that question right is because we were looking at 4,700 new students. Well, the counseling and advising office sees all the new students, right? And then in that same semester, they get assigned out to some of you all that are faculty here. So that measure was way off. It wasn't even, so I was like, oh. So that was one of our questions that we threw out.
Another one was students who enrolled in their major persist at a higher rate than students who are not in their major from at the point they enroll.
Courses in their major.
Course in their major, correct. And then the other one was.
For example, like a CJ major being in a CJ course, and that's just an.
The other one was students who take 50% or more of their coursework online in their first term stop out at a higher rate than students who took 100% in-person courses for the first time.
And I just don't think we even got to that.
Yeah, we didn't even.
So, yeah. We tried to ask questions that were affecting our everyday work.
Hi, Steve. I want to get back to your question and say we do have DFA, that's a framework for voluntary framework for accountability data that compares us with other Pennsylvania community colleges and also community colleges nationally. So institutional effectiveness would have that data available for you.
Well, maybe one or two of you could talk about what findings surprised you the most.
So I'm in finance. I don't have really emotion.
So I took all of Rich's emotion. Because I was very passionate about a lot of these questions, and I wanted answers. And I was stunned to find out that students who take 2 or more developmental courses return at a higher rate than those who don't. I was stunned to find that. I was sure that we have too many developmental courses. Like, I was sure. No, they return at a higher rate. I was so stunned and happy to hear that.
Not necessarily regarding the findings specifically, but throughout this process, obviously, we have our full-time jobs as well, and we attend meetings regularly. And I was surprised at how often I would stop, because of this process, I would stop conversations and say, but do we know that? Do we know that? Is that true? So we have so many, perhaps people don't say in meetings that, well, all of our students are on financial aid, all of our students are first generation, but sometimes that statement is implied, and that's not true. So that's really exciting, and hopefully we all can leave here today questioning those assumptions.
I didn't do anything. Any other questions? Okay, maybe Brandy. Oh, sorry. Okay.
So maybe just an addition. The advisors and counselors is supposed to move from doing whatever practice they're doing now into success training modules. So Radeska, myself, and the advisors and coaches decided to really go the research way. And we are busy putting together focus group interviews where we actually did focus groups on all 5 of the campuses, getting feedback from the students before we're actually going to implement whatever comes out of those changes. And I think what the team was trying to do is, if we say we have high risk students, we need to get to the percentages of how many of those students are high risk and what can we do in terms of their counseling or advising services. And I think it's just a matter of us really becoming data informed before we just change from doing something one way into doing something another way.
I have a question about the Lego person. Is are we going to be analyzing more data before getting the person, or is that person going to be integral in getting us to our solutions and actually making change? Which is the cart before the horse or the horse before the cart?
So what we're recommending is we buy the horse. What the horse is though, there's a variety of ways to get to that. It is not a software solution that you just put in and it fixes it. It may be somebody that's like a temporary consultant, or it could be you train somebody internally. Really what we're recommending though is we need some form of dedicated human resource that continues the iteration over and over and working on the different problems. I mentioned about student affairs, academic affairs. That data analysis person could even be working with, say, facilities to identify improvements and drive down the utility costs. Data analysis is endless. You need somebody that can do the analysis in the middle, but you need to connect them with the business owner and then where all the data is. So it's that middle piece that we just don't have somebody dedicated to. People are dropping what they're doing in their day and kind of randomly going and doing it as they can.
I almost wonder if along with just like getting the horse, if we should look at what other institutions do to find out, do they use a consultant? Do they hire someone dedicated? Figuring out what works best, because we've seen that like that's something we're working on. So I would almost recommend that as well, to figure out how do we implement that? What's the best course?
Thank you. All right, I think that is it for today. Thank you so much for joining us and listening to our presentation.
Thank you all very much. Again, as we heard, there is some good work for us to do, and we are focused on this, and I look forward to the presentation to the board on Tuesday as well. So again, we know this is in addition to your full-time jobs, so thank you very much.